Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're the Morss Global Finance podcast team, and we've crafted this episode just for you. I'm John, and I'll be guiding you as we take a closer look at the United States Gold Bureau, or as most folks know them, USGB.
USGB.
And joining us to break it all down is our finance expert, Tiffany.
It's great to be here.
Now, the first thing that jumped out at me was the name. I mean, United States Gold Bureau sounds super official, right?
It does.
But here's the catch. They're not a government agency at all. They're a private company.
Wow.
So what makes them stand out in this crowded world of gold and silver?
Well, that's a great question, and one that I'm sure a lot of listeners are wondering too. What I find interesting is their history and how it kind of ties into their credibility. They were founded back in 2003, and then in 2008, they were acquired by Lone Star Tangible Assets.
Lone Star Tangible Assets. Okay, so they've been around for a while, and they've got some solid backing. But how does Lone Star fit into all of this?
Well, back in 2017, Lone Star was actually chosen by the state of Texas to establish the Texas Bullion Depository. This was a pretty big deal because it was the very first state-run precious metals storage facility.
Wow.
So think about that for a second. A state government trusted this company with the security of precious metals.
Now that definitely adds a level of trust.
Absolutely.
Makes you wonder what other advantages they might have.
Exactly. And they didn't stop there. In 2021, they acquired Wholesale Coins Direct, which shows they're continuing to grow and adapt.
So while they're not a government agency, they've got these strong connections and a reputation for reliability.
Exactly.
So they've got this fascinating history. But why would someone choose USGB over any other precious metals dealer? What are they really selling besides just gold and silver?
Well, they seem to be really emphasizing a few key things: expertise, reliability, but they also really push this customer-centric approach, It's like they want to be your trusted guide in this world of precious metals. They're even active members of the National Coin and Bullion Association.
Yeah.
Which means they adhere to, strict ethical and professional standards.
So if you're new to precious metals, it sounds like they want you to feel comfortable and guided.
Yeah, absolutely.
And for someone who's maybe a bit more experienced, what sets USGB apart?
That's where their focus on community and what they call progressive solutions really comes in. They seem to be targeting individuals who are looking for more than just a transaction. They want to be a part of, a community of investors. And they want to offer innovative ways to manage and grow your wealth.
Okay, so they're appealing to both newcomers and seasoned investors. Now, let's get to the good stuff. What can you actually find in their treasure chest offerings?
Well, they've got a pretty diverse selection, catering to a wide range of interests and investment goals. For gold, they offer everything from your standard bars and coins to more popular options like Perth Mint, PMPs, American Eagles, Buffaloes, Philharmonics.
So basically, all the gold hits.
Pretty much. And they haven't forgotten about silver either. You can find rounds, Britannias, koalas, eagles, bars in all sorts of sizes. And they even offer platinum in the form of Britannias, Maple Leafs, American Eagles, and bars.
That covers a lot of ground. What about palladium? Is that something they offer as well?
They do offer palladium bars and American Eagle coins. But palladium's in such high demand right now, that availability can be a bit limited.
So if you're interested in palladium, you might need to be a bit more proactive.
Yeah.
Now let's talk storage.
Yeah.
Imagine that's a big concern for anyone investing in precious metals.
Right.
You don't want to just be stashing gold bars under your mattress.
Definitely not. And USGB actually offers a whole range of storage solutions, from basic security safes to those elegant display cases you might see in the movies. But their crown jewel is, of course, the Texas Bullion Depository, which we mentioned earlier.
Right. That state-run facility. Sounds pretty impressive. But let's dive a little deeper into why it really stands out. What are the advantages of storing your precious metals there?
Well, first and foremost, you've got that state-backed guarantee, which brings a level of security and trust that's hard to match. And on top of that, everything stored there is insured by Lloyd's of London.
Now, that's a pretty compelling combination.
Yeah.
But is it just about security?
Not at all. The Texas Bullion Depository offers professional management. So that means your investments are in the hands of experts. They also prioritize transparency, so you always know what's happening with your assets. Plus, you have easy access to your metals if you need them. And it's all done in a really cost-effective manner compared to some private vaults.
So it sounds like they've really thought through the whole storage aspect. But what about the other side of the coin? Let's say you wanted to sell your precious metals. What's that process like with USGB?
It's pretty straightforward, actually. They have a 3-step process. Choose your metals, package and send them using the materials they provide through FedEx, and then get paid. You can choose direct deposit, check, or even store credit.
So pretty streamlined experience. But let's be honest, the big question on everyone's mind is fees. What kind of costs are we looking at here?
That's where things can get a little tricky. They advertise selling at the spot price, which is the current market value of the metal. However, there are additional costs to consider.
So what are these additional costs? And how do they impact the overall investment? That's something our listeners will definitely want to know.
Well, they have a one-time setup fee of $250, and then there's an annual maintenance fee of $150. Those are pretty standard in the industry. But then you also have storage fees, which can vary depending on where you choose to store your metals and the size of your holdings. And then, of course, there's that $25 shipping and insurance fee if you decide to sell your metals. Back to USGB.
So it's important to factor in all of those additional costs to get a clear picture of the real investment potential.
Absolutely. Transparency is key. And it's always a good idea to compare fees across different companies before making a decision. Now, speaking of transparency, let's take a look at what customers are actually saying about USGB.
Yeah, real-world experiences can be really telling. What's the overall sentiment like in the reviews?
It's a bit of a mixed bag, actually, which is something to keep in mind. They have a pretty solid A+ rating with 4.18 stars out of 5 on the Better Business Bureau. But that's only based on 11 reviews.
Okay, so a pretty small sample size there. What about other platforms with more reviews?
On Trustpilot, their score drops to 2.9 out of 5. But that's based on almost 900 reviews. And then if we look at Consumer Affairs, they have a 3.2 out of 5 from 40 reviews. Google gives them 4 out of 5 stars based on 180 reviews. And Yelp shows 3.1 stars out of 5 from 17 reviews.
So definitely some variation there.
Yeah.
What are the people who are giving them positive reviews highlighting?
A lot of the positive reviews mention their helpful and professional staff. There are even some shout-outs to specific employees, like Kyle and Damon, who are praised for their expertise and their ability to really guide customers through the whole process. Some reviewers also highlighted their responsiveness and their willingness to go the extra mile, especially during challenging situations.
That personal touch can make a big difference, especially when you're dealing with something as valuable as precious metals.
Right.
But on the flip side, what are the negative reviews focusing on?
Some reviewers express concerns about product quality and inconsistencies in customer service. There's even a mention of a former contractor who had issues getting paid, which raises some red flags. And another customer was frustrated with how a dispute over an order was handled, suggesting their problem-solving process isn't always smooth sailing.
So it sounds like there's a need for some more consistency in their operations. So how should our listener weigh these varying reviews?
Well, it's important to remember that online reviews can be subjective, so while they offer valuable insights, they shouldn't be the only thing you consider, Use them as a starting point to identify potential areas of concern and then do your own research to see if those concerns are valid.
That's a great point. It's all about getting a balanced perspective.
Exactly.
Now, before we move on, let's talk a little bit more about those gold IRAs we mentioned earlier. They seem to be a big part of USGB's offerings.
They are.
Can you explain how they work?
Yeah.
And why someone might choose this option?
Sure. A gold IRA or a precious metals IRA is a self-directed individual retirement account where you can hold physical gold, silver, platinum, or palladium as part of your retirement savings. This can be appealing for people who want to diversify their portfolio and maybe hedge against inflation or market volatility.
So it's like adding a layer of stability to your retirement plan.
Exactly.
Especially during uncertain economic times.
Right. And with USGB, you can either convert an existing IRA or set up a new account with a minimum investment of $35,000. They also partner with 10 different storage facilities across the U.S., giving you flexibility and choice in where your precious metals are stored.
That's a nice perk, especially if you're concerned about having access to your assets, but with all these options and services. It's easy to get lost in the details.
As we wrap up this part of our deep dive, can you summarize the key pros and cons of working with USGB? Of course. On the plus side, they have a long history in the industry, dating back to 2003. And they offer a really wide range of products to choose from. They also seem to be very focused on investor education, providing lots of information and resources on their website. And they offer some convenient features like live chat support, free shipping on orders over $99, and guidance on setting up those precious metals IRAs.
Those are definitely some attractive advantages. But what about the potential drawbacks? What should our listeners be aware of?
Well, as we discussed, the customer reviews are a bit mixed, which points to some potential inconsistencies in their service and problem resolution. They could also be more transparent about the fees associated with their retirement accounts. And a notable limitation is that they only serve U.S. residents.
So there are definitely some trade-offs to consider. But ultimately, the decision comes down to individual needs and priorities.
Exactly. It's about weighing those pros and cons and figuring out if USGB truly aligns with your investment goals and your risk tolerance.
Now, before we move on, I want to circle back to something we touched on earlier, the concept of spot price. It's a term that gets thrown around a lot in the precious metals world, but it can be a bit confusing. Can you break it down for our listener?
Absolutely. So spot price is essentially the current market value of a precious metal. At any given time, it's constantly fluctuating based on supply and demand, global events, and various other market forces. When you buy precious metals, you're usually paying the spot price plus any additional premiums or fees charged by the dealer.
So it's not just a fixed price.
No, not at all. It's dynamic and constantly changing. You can actually track the spot price of gold, silver, platinum, and palladium on various financial websites and trading platforms. USGB even has a live spot price chart on their website, which can be helpful for keeping an eye on market trends.
Okay, that makes sense. So when you're thinking about investing in precious metals, it's important to be aware of those spot price fluctuations, how they might impact your overall returns.
Precisely. And that's where doing your research and staying informed becomes really crucial. You know, don't just jump into an investment without understanding those market dynamics.
Solid advice. I think we've covered a lot of ground here, but I want to make sure we leave our listener with some actionable insights. They've learned about USGB, their offerings, the pros and cons, and even the concept of spot price.
Right.
But what's the next step? What should they do with this information?
That's a great question.
We've given them a lot to think about.
We have. I think the main thing is knowledge is power. You know, we've laid out a foundation for understanding USGB, but now it's up to the listener to really take control of their own investment journey.
So what would that look like in a practical sense? What are some things they could do?
Well, first, I'd encourage them to head over to USGB's website and really dig into those resources they offer. They've got tons of info on precious metal investing, like educational guides, market analysis, and even a free investor guide.
That free investor guide sounds like a great place to start, especially for someone who's new to all of this.
It is.
Yeah.
Don't just take our word for it. You know, do your own research. Compare USGB with other reputable dealers. Look into their fee structures. Read independent reviews. And really get a sense of what aligns best with your individual needs and values.
So it's all about gathering information from different sources.
Yeah.
And forming your own opinion.
Exactly.
What if they still have questions or need more guidance?
Well, that's when expert advice can be super valuable. You know, a financial advisor who specializes in precious metals can give you personalized recommendations based on your specific financial goals and your risk tolerance.
Like having a trusted guide to help navigate this whole world.
Right.
Now, before we wrap up, I want to touch on one last thing. We've talked a lot about the practical stuff when it comes to investing in precious metals. But there's also an emotional side to it.
There is.
People often link gold and silver, security and stability, especially in times of uncertainty. How should our listener approach that emotional aspect?
That's a really important point. Investing should never be driven solely by emotions. While it's natural to want that security and stability, it's crucial to make informed decisions based on a solid understanding of the market and your own financial situation.
So don't let fear or hype dictate your choices.
Exactly. Precious metals can be a great addition to a diversified portfolio, but they're not a magic solution. They should be just one part of a broader financial strategy.
Well said. I think we've given our listeners a really thorough overview of USGB and the whole world of precious metal investing. We covered their history, their offerings, storage options, fees, even dug into customer reviews, and the emotional aspects of investing. We also talked about the importance of research, getting expert advice, and making smart decisions. As we close out this deep dive, what's the final message you want to leave our listeners with?
Just remember, investing is a journey, not a destination. It's about constantly learning, adapting to those market changes, and making choices that line up with your long-term goals. And we, the Morss Global Finance podcast team, are here to help every step of the way.
And don't forget, knowledge is your most valuable asset. Keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep into the world of finance. Thanks for joining us on the Deep Dive.